If fear is the only thing stopping us from achieving our dreams, and we only fear what we don't understand, then the antidote to fear is knowledge. All we have to do is find out who has the knowledge that we need to conquer our fears and achieve our entrepreneurial dreams. My name is Callum Walker, and welcome to the podcast that will help you figure it out and conquer this lonely entrepreneurial journey.
So I have been experimenting with cold water therapy, actually, the past 10 weeks now. No, I'm going to be honest, to begin with, I was incredibly skeptical. Why was I incredibly skeptical? Because, well, actually, partly, I remember reading research papers when I was at uni around cold water therapy and ice baths for recovery. And I remember one of the lectures that I was attending, the professor was saying that, there's no real evidence that in the long term it can enhance recovery. So I guess I was always incredibly skeptical around it, because everything I'd read had not really shown that there'd be long-term benefits to recovery, because a lot of the studies that are out there very much showcase that in the short term, yes, you can get a decrease in inflammation, but in the long term, that can then actually impair your ability to build muscle, recover, and all that sort of stuff. So I'd always been very against it. And then also, I saw Wim Hof everywhere, and I was just like, this guy's fucking nuts. He's basically saying that cold water and cold water therapy just saves the day and solves everything. But I'm going to be honest, the more and more I've kind of gone into the world, the more and more I've been working myself, the more and more I've read, the more and more I've realised that the majority is most of the time wrong. And then actually it's the 1%, it's the crazy people who are actually doing all of the things that are actually right. Wow, I'm going through this bit of an echo. There's the crazy people, the outliers, who are shouting from the hills saying, honestly, do this, do this, do this, do this. And the ones that are ignored, who are actually the people who are doing the right stuff. And I think that I've certainly fallen victim to this, of being incredibly arrogant sometimes, of, I actually know it all. And I'm just going to dismiss things because I don't know everything about it. I'm just going to dismiss it. So, and it's a client would come to me, be like, what do you think of this? How is it? Hey, cool. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? And I'd be like, no, it's a waste of time, pointless. And the reason why I would do that, I didn't actually know the answer. So the problem was it actually threatened my identity. So I actually knew nothing about it. So it's people used to come to me going, I see all these people doing cold showers and all this sort of stuff. What do you think? I'm no, waste of time, pointless. I knew nothing about it apart from some research papers that I'd read about 10 years ago. Well, I finished uni. Yeah. No, I started uni 10 years ago. Wow. That makes me feel old. So I just shoot it down because it threatened my identity. It almost made me, it put me in a position where I'd be like, shit, I don't know the answer to this. I'm going to look stupid. But I've really adopted an attitude of humility. And I think that as a coach or even an entrepreneur or whatever, if you can, really kind of adopt a mentality of humility, that I don't know all the answers, that maybe before I go straight to having a judgment on something and shooting it down, I'm actually going to, first of all, look it up. Second of all, actually go into detail and find out whether it works or not, and actually try it out on myself. And this is what I've kind of done with the cold water stuff, that the thing is, I saw a lot of people who I very much respect doing it. And I know Tony Robbins has been talking about this for years, about how he starts his day off with, a cold plunge. And I was like, there has to be something to this. I'm just going to go and give it a go. So I've been doing it for, 10 weeks now? And I'll be honest, so I did it right at the start of the year. And I think I lasted about 5 seconds. Not the first time I said that. I lasted about 5 seconds. I remember I was in the cold shower. It's freezing cold. I turned it off 5 seconds. And I was like, And my partner was just like, what the fuck are you doing? Why are you such a baby? I can hear you from downstairs, and I live in a 3-story house. That's not impressive, by the way. It's just how it is. And, so I was just screaming like that. But anyway, so the first time I did it, I was like, this is awful. I'm not doing it again, But I was like, no, look, I made a commitment. I'm going to do it. So I made this commitment, I did it, 5 seconds then, and I realized the mistake I made. The mistake that I made was that I turned it super, super cold straight away. I should have just weaned myself in. So I started doing it, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, and a minute, and I'm going to be honest, I was like, shit, I feel so good after this. And I think, look, I've noticed 3 key benefits. I'll tell you the thing that I haven't noticed. I can't say I've necessarily noticed a difference in my recovery physically. I haven't really noticed that I feel any different physically in the sense of that soreness between training sessions. But then I also put that down to the fact that I do sleep really well. I eat very well. I'm in a very low carb diet, very anti-inflammatory anyway. I'm also trained for quite some time anyway, the last 10 years. So I don't necessarily struggle with DOMs a lot. So I haven't really noticed that. But what have I noticed? I think the thing that Tony Robbins talks about, change of state, that's been huge. And it was interesting because I was listening to him on a podcast with Tim Ferriss. And Tim Ferriss, great podcast called The Tim Ferriss Show. Tim Ferriss was talking about how he was basically asking, Tony, do you ever get in a creative funk, a slump? What do you do? And he's like, no, that never happens to me. So what do you mean? He goes, it doesn't happen to me because I never let it happen to me. That if I'm in that sort of situation, I change my state physiologically. So I change my physiology, and that then re-sparks the creativity, which I really agree with. That that I can potentially a previous me, if I've experienced that creativity block. So when you're you're trying to write some content, or you're trying to create something on your website or whatever, and it's just not coming to you. And I would try and push and push and push and push and push through. But then what I always did that I found to be really beneficial was I'd go for a walk. So I'd come here, I'd get a little bit of some more creativity, and it'd re-spark everything. And he said that's what he uses cold showers for, and that cold plunge, that it very much awakens his physiology, changes his state, and it has a huge impact. And I've definitely noticed that 100%. That it's allowed me to I do in between clients, done in the morning, really to just change my state and get me into that sort of activated state. And I've definitely noticed that when I'm in it and when I come out of it, I feel activated. That's the only way I can really say it. I'm not going to go too crazy into the physiology because I don't think it's really necessary, but I've certainly found the change of state's been amazing, and just feeling that sense of activation, 100%. So I would definitely recommend it if you're in a place where you're I'm really struggling with creativity. I really struggle to break up the day, all that sort of stuff. Just hop it in for even 30 seconds, change everything. Secondly, there's a lot of reports on how cold water therapy can potentially improve depression, anxiety, all that sort of stuff. And I think that comes in 2 parts. And I really started to read this through Wim Hof's book, where he was talking about that improved circulation that you get off the back of cold water therapy can really improve the transportation of nutrients, oxygen, everything, into areas of the brain that might previously have been potentially closed off to this sort of stuff. And that does make sense to me. But I think also when I'm in there, what do I focus on? My breathing. I do breathing exercises, all that sort of stuff. And yeah, that's a form of mindfulness. So I don't know whether the benefits of it are directly attributed to the cold water or focusing on my breath, but I've definitely noticed an enhancement in presence, an enhancement of clarity of thought, and a decrease in anxiety, 100%. But I don't know whether that's the cold water or the breathing exercises. But to be honest, I don't really care. But I also do think that, it makes sense to me that I'm massive on just in general, we need to get back to being human. And I think being in cold water is being human, because I think about it that like in real world times, we'd wash ourselves, yeah, but like we wouldn't wash ourselves in a hot bath. Like, where am I getting hot water? Where am I being exposed to it? Like, unless I actually would find like a hot spring or anything like that, I'm not really gonna be exposed to that sort of stuff. So, really look at what is the water that we would actually be exposed to. All right, Siri. The water be exposed to be cold water. So I think that is part and parcel of what we were supposed to be exposed to. But like in the modern society, we're not exposed to that anymore. So naturally, because we're not exposed to it, we become very weak to it. But also maybe we've missed out on a lot of the benefits that we would have actually received from what we're programmed to be doing. So I think that has a huge part of it. It's part of that getting back to being human. And clearly there must be like unexplored benefits that we're missing out on from being in this modern created world. But I think the biggest thing, and I put this on my newsletter the other day, the biggest thing that I've really noticed, and I'm huge on this, like, do one thing every day that scares you. Yeah. And the more and more you do something, the more and more you become accustomed to it, and the more and more it then becomes ingrained in you, yeah? And there's not a day that goes by that I'm like, right, I'm really excited to get in that cold water. Like, it's fucking scary. Like, it's scary. But, like, by doing it, I'm subconsciously going, right, okay, I'm feeling that fear and I'm doing it anyway. And subconsciously, by doing that over and over and over and over again, that just reinforces my own mindset of, right, even if something scares the shit out of me, I'm going to do it anyway. And what's amazing is what's on the other side of that fear. Something positive. Like, I feel amazing after doing it. So I'm 10 weeks in. I found it super, super beneficial. I'm definitely going to continue it. I'm working up the courage to get in an ice bath. I think I'm kind of nearly there, because, and Wim Hof was talking about it in his book, that like your exposure to the cold is going to get easier and easier and easier. I don't know whether it's just my water temperature's not very good. But I certainly don't feel as cold in the water. I'm able to stay in it for as long as possible. So I feel like I'm kind of moving up towards being able to just jump in cold water. But I think from a physical recovery perspective, I'm not sure. I'm not sold. I haven't noticed a difference. But from a entrepreneurial side of things, from enhancing cognitive performance, yeah, sold, in. Definitely something I'm going to continue. And remember that, like, for us as entrepreneurs, as coaches, business owners, experts, whatever you want to call yourself, we are the product. Yeah, we are the product. So, I work with a lot of online coaches, personal trainers, whatever. They're not buying personal training. They're not buying online coaching. They're buying you. My clients buy me. So if they're buying me, I want to make me the best version that I could possibly be, because the better I can be, the more likely that they're going to actually want to work with me, the better the result that they're going to get from me. And the more that I can then deliver to them and I can change their lives. So I think that is huge for you to be able to go, right, okay, what are all of the things that I can just do to improve myself on a daily basis? And I was talking to my partner about this yesterday. We went for a walk. And I basically said, you know what? I'm following the mindset of, right, is this going to improve the quality of my life? Is this going to make me happier? And by adopting that sort of mentality, I've been able to make a lot better decisions. So decisions, I'm like, right, okay, by doing X, is that actually going to improve the quality of my life or not? If the answer is no, don't do it. If the answer is yes, do it. So yes, that's my experience. Have an amazing day. Catch you later. And remember, every single one of your clients got you just one new client, doubled your business.